Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Cole Phillips, author of The Adventure of the Twisted Truths and host of The Book and Dagger. And today we're going to be doing a really fun video. This is going to be the first in a series of videos, probably 2 or 3 parts, in which we discuss some of the best sword fights in all fictional history. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. First on our list, we're going to be talking a bit about, there's going to be massive spoilers in this video, by the way, so we're going to be talking about sword fights, and if you have not read or any of these books or watched any of these movies, there will be spoilers for some of these fights, how they end, what characters are involved. So, just you are forewarned. But so our first fight that we're going to discuss today is from it's the book and it's a book and a movie. And it's called The Princess Bride. And I actually just recently, I've never read The Princess Bride, and I actually just recently watched the movie. I want to say it was about 2 months ago, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm going to definitely read the book someday. But one of my favorite moments in the entirety of the Princess Bride movie was when one of the main characters, Wesley, sword fought against a guy named Inigo Montoya. And there's so much that's good about this scene. The way they introduce it is Inigo Montoya is this swordsman, and he's part of this group that's kidnapped Wesley's love, the Buttercup. And so Wesley is chasing after them, and they climb up this rocky cliff. And Inigo Montoya stays behind because he sees Wesley climbing up, following them. So he stays behind to try and stop Wesley. And Wesley gets to the top, and the two then proceed to have a sword fight. And it's the choreography of the sword fight is amazing. It's like a playful atmosphere. They kind of banter back and forth. The music that plays in the background is also a really good component of this fight. The only thing I would say that isn't that I just wish this fight had gone on longer. It's a pretty short fight compared to the movie and compared to a lot of other sword fights out there. And it was just really well done. And I just wish it had gone on longer. That's my only complaint with it. But it's just really good. And in the end, Wesley does eventually beat Inigo Montoya. But later Inigo Montoya becomes friends with Wesley because he respects Wesley's swordsman skills so much. It's just a really awesome fight scene that shows how good of a fighter Wesley is with a sword. And it also shows how good Inigo Montoya is with his sword, even though he's eventually defeated by Wesley. But Wesley does not kill Inigo Montoya, and it just sets up their future friendship. So it's a really impactful moment in The Princess Bride, and the sword play is amazing. So with that being said, we're going to move on to our next sword fight on this list, which is, I think it's a little like The Princess Bride. I feel like a lot of people know about it, and they probably are very familiar with this scene. This next sword fight is going to be a little less well known, I think, even amongst Tolkien fans. So, if you are someone who has read The Lord of the Rings or watched the Lord of the Rings movies, you know there are many awesome battles and fight scenes. Now, however, in the Silmarillion, there are a lot of even greater battles, and also there's a lot of really good fight scenes in the Silmarillion, which I feel like are not even among Tolkien fans. There are a lot of people who have read the Silmarillion, but there are also just like even casual Tolkien fans or Tolkien fans who absolutely love the Lord of the Rings books or love the movies and have not read the Silmarillion. And the Silmarillion actually has one of the greatest one-on-one fights in the entirety of the Tolkien universe. It takes place in the first age of Middle Earth, and it is between the Elf King Fingolfin and the Dark Lord Morgoth. Morgoth was Sauron's master, being even more powerful than Sauron. And Fingolfin was a very powerful elven king. And like I said, it takes place in the First Age, I believe, in the year 456. I'll have to look that back up. And I don't believe that's mistake. I believe it's the year 456. But basically, Fingolfin rode to Morgoth's fortress, and he challenged Morgoth to a fight. And Morgoth came out, and Morgoth brought his hammer Grond with him, which a really interesting fact is that Morgoth, his weapon, his hammer was named Grond. Later in Lord of the Rings, Sauron forged this battering ram to take down the city of Minas Tirith, and they named the battering ram. They named the battering ram Grond in honor of Morgoth's hammer, which is a really fun little tidbit. If you've ever seen the Lord of the Rings movies, you know that when they bringing up the battering ram, all the orcs are all chanting Grond, 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 and it's a really cool tribute that they paid to Morgoth's hammer. But then Fingolfin shows up, and Fingolfin has his sword, Ringle, which is a really cool sword. It's only mentioned this once, and it only pops up this once in the entirety of the Tolkien universe. But it's a sword that like shines like crystal, they say. And so Fingolfin, who proceeds to battle against Morgoth, it's basically a fallen Valar versus a powerful Elf King. It's a really cool battle, and it is described as one that the elves do not sing of, nor do the orcs like to speak of, because while Morgoth did eventually crush Fingolfin with his hammer, Fingolfin wounded Morgoth 7 times with his sword and made Morgoth bleed, which is a crazy feat considering basically Morgoth is like god tier power, like, and then Fingolfin's basically like he's an immortal elf, but he's still like this tall, like maybe this tall compared to Morgoth, who's a gigantic being, like taller than a giant. So it's a really cool fight scene in Lord of the Rings. Again, Tolkien just nails it with his battles between crazy powerful beings, and the Silmarillion has a lot of fun, like cool stories like this. But this one just stands out as one of the best single combat sword fights in the entirety of the Tolkien lore. So next we're going to move on to number 3, which is another little known sword fight. And this actually came from a video game series made for the DS and later the 3DS, the Professor Layton games. Now, I played as a young teenager. I was introduced to Professor Layton games and on the DS, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. For those of you who are not familiar with Professor Layton, it is an amazing, really cool, fun, quirky universe. Basically, Professor Layton is this English gentleman / professor of archaeology at Gresham Hall University. He's basically what would happen if you crossed Indiana Jones and Sherlock Holmes, would be a good way of putting it. But the games are really fun. They have little cutscenes and like storylines and voice acting for some parts. And it's basically Professor Layton journeys with his assistants to solve mysteries and puzzles. There's lots of puzzles in the game. So it's a really nice little fun little, if you're looking for like a brain challenge. But the storyline are also really good. There's lots of plot twists, lots of quirky, fun characters with names that are puns that make you laugh hilariously. And it's one of the best scenes in Professor Layton, though, is that it's a little known fact that Professor Layton is a professor of archaeology. He also loves drinking tea, solving puzzles and mysteries, but he's just this really, throughout the game series, you see him as he's this really nice, polite guy. He helps everyone out. He captures bad guys. He's always just polite and gentlemanly. It's actually canon Professor Layton lore that he is a awesome sword fighter. And you see this demonstrated in multiple games. But one of the best sword fights in all Professor Layton takes place in a crossover game, which was made. Professor Layton crossed over with the Ace Attorney universe. They made a game for, I believe it was 3DS, and there's a scene where Professor Layton takes on 5 knights, like robotic knights with first he shows, so he and his assistant show up at this tower, and they got transported to this world called Labyrinthia, and they're solving this mystery. And Professor Layton, in order to get to the bottom of it, ventures into this tower and reaches the top where along the way he uncovers a mystery. And when the temporarily he's not really a villain throughout the show, but he doesn't like that Professor Layton is trying to uncover the mystery. So he sends 5 robotic knights at like Professor Layton, or not 5, but he sends a number of robotic knights at Professor Layton, and Professor Layton then proceeds to take one of the knight's sword and then proceeds to just absolutely show what an awesome dude he is when it comes to sword wielding. The background music in this cutscene is amazing. It is really good. It's I'll just say the music is incredible for every Professor Layton game, but especially this crossover game, they nailed the music. The animation of Professor Layton swinging his sword and fighting is amazing, and Professor Layton is also like flipping and leaping and jumping and dodging. He's just they're showing what an acrobat he is. And then Professor Layton finally takes on the biggest one, which is like this giant robot knight with an axe. And he proceeds to use not only his sword skills, but also his wits to outsmart this knight. And it is just a really cool fight scene that shows just how good of a character Professor Layton is. Next on, we're going to move to number 4 in our best sword fights of all history. And I think this is one that a lot of people are going to be very familiar with. And it is the Duel of the Fates from episode 1 of Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. And it is the awesome fight scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn fight Darth Maul for the future of Naboo, but also who will raise Anakin and train him as a Jedi. And Duel of the Fates, people hate on the prequels all the time, and I get where it's coming from. There can be some weird, choppy writing in the prequels. Overall, however, I love the Star Wars prequels. I think the prequels are better than the Disney sequels that Disney made. And honestly, I would say without a doubt, without a question, the music and the lightsaber fights in the prequels are better than even the original Star Wars movies. So, with that being said, I will just say also, Duel of the Fates is not only the name of the duel where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fight Darth Maul, but it's also the name of the second best Star Wars soundtrack of all time. Just the action fight scenes, the flipping, the leaping, the use of the Force, the music playing in the background as Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fight Darth Maul is. I remember it was one of the first lightsaber duels I ever saw as like a kid of loving Star Wars, and I loved it. I remember as a kid, I'd never seen the movies, but I saw the Duel of the Fates. I was like a clip on YouTube, and I loved it so much, and that was just kind of what helped me get into like love Star Wars so much. And I would say it's just one of the most iconic fight scenes in all of movie history. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. With that being said, that will be the first part of this video. Those are going to be all the fights we'll talk about today, and be on the lookout for part 2 of this video series. And I'll see you guys next time.